Welcome to the third episode of this multi-part video series on VMware Aria suite of products and solutions. My name is Satya Shrestha, a senior staff multi-cloud solutions architect here at VMware, and I'm joined by my colleague, Sajal Debnath, who is a staff customer success architect at VMware. Welcome, Sajal.
Thank you, Satya, for having me here. Hello, everyone.
So in today's video, we will cover what and why of tagging and its importance in multi-cloud automation. So Sajal, let's start with the what of tagging and what actually tags are.
Let's first start with the definition. Formal definition, if we look into this as per Wikipedia, it says that in information system, when you tag something, you assign a keyword or term to a piece of information. So you just assign a term or keyword to it. And then in terms of information systems, as an internet bookmark, digital image, or database record, or computer file, you are just assigning a keyword or term to it. That's what the definition of tagging is. If they're like names given to any entity or object, living or otherwise, to identify them. They are labels, right?
Right.
In VMware terms, they are labels that you add to various components. They follow the name value form, but their construction is generally free form. In Aria Automation, they're typically context driven. That means meaning of the tag is which context are they using or you are using them. So that's why you say it's context driven. And then we will see in the examples, right? Now let's talk about their importance. In terms of Aria Automation or Aria suite of products, or in general cloud today, where we see cloud solutions, it is at the heart of the solution.
Yes.
If you have, say, less number of solutions, say, less number of components, less than 10, 20, you don't need tags to keep track of things. But then you have hundreds of components, hundreds of VMs in the cloud environment. How do you keep track of everything? That's where tagging is so important.
I was just about to add, in the cloud world, I have seen even in VMware Cloud AWS or like a public cloud like AWS or Azure, everything is tagged, right? The tagging is, like you said, the heart of the solution. It is tagged. So in the future, that tag value can be used to track, monitor, and do various things, which I think you're going to talk about as well.
You are absolutely right. In Aria Automation, it's more important because it is a mean to drive and apply policies, helps in search and identification. Above all of the tasks, tags define where the item should be placed. So it drives everything in Aria Automation. That's why it's so important. In terms of nature of the tags, in Aria Automation, they are categorized as capability tags, constraint tags, and standard tags. There's three categories of tags are there.
Right.
And they are context-based. So the same tags can be used as capability tags, constraint tags, and then standard tags are different. So we will talk about that. But then these tags can be internal and external. External means any tags which is external to Aria Automation. And you can discover tags from other environments. Those are external tags. And the tags that you define within Aria Automation are the internal tags. The constraint tags can be hard and soft, as the name suggests. Hard tags, that means if you put a hard constraint, it needs to be fulfilled. Soft tags are the best value. It may or may not apply. We will see where the soft tags would be applied.
So this is like a mandatory or optional constraints, right?
Optional tags.
Right, got it.
They are secondary tags, yes. If you have projects and templates in automation, if you have the same tags or the tags applied at both the levels, just remember the project will take precedence. So for example, you say, I have an endpoint restriction on a project, and then I want to supersede that using templates, you cannot. Project will always take precedence.
Right.
But you can actually negate that using this key fail on constraint merge conflict. In the template, if you mention that, then this restriction is lifted. So typically, you would have the tag key, say, for example, endpoint, and then a value is, say, vCenter server or vSphere or AWS, something like that. And then you don't need to mention hard or soft. By default, everything is hard, unless it is specifically mentioned it's soft. The other thing is that exclamation mark, it actually negates the tag. So you can mention a tag and then say that exclamation value, which is negates, not value, in the sense, except this, everything else. That is interesting.
So it's like a not. It's like not, right?
Not value, logical not value.
So basically, it's like a key value pair, right?
It is key value pair. It is the way key and then value. And then standard tags are the tags which are by default used inside of Aria Automation. You cannot use those. I mean, you can use those, but then you cannot define those in your environment.
Yeah, makes perfect sense. So three types of tags, and the standards are the ones that are system defined, that we can use it, but you cannot define them and use those as key value pair. Got it.
Right.
Okay, so we covered the what of tags. Now let's talk about how. Tell us how it actually works in any automation framework.
Right. It is majorly used in Aria Automation for placement. And then we will see how it's used in other environments as well, or other use cases. But let's talk about the placement first. So you have cloud zones where we define the capability tags, because you have the compute, you have the memory everywhere there. So these are your capabilities. So you define a tag in cloud zone, which is capability. And then you have projects and images where you have the constraint tags. That means this project can only deploy to this cloud zone. That's why it's constrained, because you're saying that it cannot go anywhere else. Whereas cloud zone, you're saying, I have this cluster. So you have this capability to deploy. So that's why it's capability and constraint. Similarly, you have storage capability tags and network capability tags, because you have those resources where you can deploy. So that's why those are capability. Projects and images are constraints. And then you have cloud template, where you define the constraints. Say, I am defining this VM, but then this VM can only be deployed to this cloud zone. It can go to this storage and this networks. That's why you are setting the constraints on that particular resource. Now, all of those comes together that are processed and said, okay, where it needs to be deployed. Once it's complied, okay, this is in compliance with my defined tags, it can be deployed to any endpoint. So the VM can go to public cloud, or it can go to VMware on AWS, or even a private environment. That's how tag defines it.
So basically, it's really modular, that you can choose the cloud zone as well as the storage profiles for storage, and also network profile for network. And then once the constraints are all met, then it will deploy on the right cloud environment, right? That's how the tag is important in this kind of scenario.
Right. The thing is, you don't need to have tags if you have pretty much a single environment, single storage, single network, because you know everything is going there. When you have multiples of storage, how do you decide where that particular VM should go?
Exactly.
You have public clouds, you have VMware on AWS, you have private cloud infrastructure. How do you decide where that VM should land to? That's where the cloud zones come into place. Within that, which network it should go. You need to have a tag, and then you match those constraints and the capabilities. And then when it's okay, I found a perfect match. That's where it's compliant, and it should go to there.
Yep, that perfectly makes sense.
Right. So in this term, one point I wanted to talk about is tag inheritance. So your cloud account, say for example, has 3 tags, say cluster 01, cluster 02, cluster 03, because your cloud account has 3 different clusters. And under that, you have the physical clusters tagged with cluster 01, cluster 02, cluster 03, like you see here. So individual clusters are tagged like this. Now you want to deploy a VM, and then in the cloud template, you mention that tag is cluster 01. So where this particular VM should land, we think that this should land to physical cluster 1, because the VM is tagged as cluster 01, and then physical cluster is tagged as cluster 01, right? It is a perfect match. The problem is the tag inheritance. Since the cloud account had all the 3 tags, essentially underlying all the physical servers have all the 3 tags. So the VM can land to any of one of the clusters. So we need to be very mindful of this case, that we apply tags at the lowest level, not at the top level. If you apply the same tags at the top level, saying that this cloud account has all these 3 physical clusters, so the capabilities of these 3 clusters are tagged at cloud account level. Any tag that you apply at cloud account level would be applied to underlying physical resources as well.
It will be all inherited everywhere. Got it.
Yes. So if you mention VM resource with cluster 01, it can land up to any one of the physical clusters. So this is a scenario which you should keep in mind while doing tagging.
Okay, so then how does tag help in deciding the actual placement of VMs?
Right. So how that is selected is based on this flowchart, actually. So it starts with the allocation process, match the cloud account type, filter by dependencies on the other components, and then filter by flavor, filter by image profiles, and then filter by powered on cloud accounts, filter by instance, then which project placement policy is selected first. So it comes to project placement selection, whether it's spread or the default ones. If it's the default one, then start selection in zone. Otherwise, it just uses the remaining zones, and then otherwise it calculates number of VMs per host, order by the ratio, and then finally the allocation process continues. All of that actually is visible when you go ahead and do the deployment. You can see the allocation, placement, all of that in a graphical format in Aria Automation.
Right. So these are all represented in this graphical chart as well.
Yeah. So that helps in the sense, it helps you identify any problems that you have. So it's very logical. It's like logically you'd expect a VM to land in a particular location, and it shows which location was chosen and why. In this context, I would say processing of the tags, how it happens is cloud zones are filtered by the several criteria, including availability and the profiles that you have set. Tags in the profiles for that particular region the zone belongs to are matched. Zone and compute capability tags are used to filter out the remaining clouds, and that's exactly where which are the cloud zones which have these hard constraints. Once that is done, you have the filtered zones. Here you have 2 or 3 cloud zones which comply to that. Then priority is used to select a cloud zone. So if there are several cloud zones with the same priority, they are sorted by matching soft constraints. So there the soft constraints are used. After the hard constraint are used to filter out the cloud zones, and then all of them have like same priority, then you would use the soft constraints. Using a combination of the cloud zone and the compute capabilities, it would further filter out. Then when you select a cloud zone, a host is selected by matching a series of filters, including hard and soft constraints as defined in cloud template. So that's how the entire processing of the tags happens within cloud automation.
Okay. So in case of multi-cloud automation, then what are some of the tagging best practices?
Right. So in terms of the best practices, first of all, you should start with a clear plan and communicate this plan to all users. When I say all users, your application architect, your infrastructure architect, your storage architect, your network architect, all of them should come together and define and agree upon a plan that, okay, this is exactly how we are going to tag these environments. And the plan must support the deployment needs. That means if it says that, okay, your production environment should go to this cluster, so your tagging plan should back that up, right? Yes. So that's how your plan must support the deployment needs. The tags needs to be human readable and understandable. It needs to be simple, clear, and meaningful names and values for tag. So it needs to be meaningful. Like for example, if you have a storage, which is SSD storage, and then you have SAS-based storage, and then you have HDD storage, tag them accordingly. If you have tiers, tag them accordingly, like gold, silver, bronze. It makes sense, right? And then there is something like you can actually use tags without using a name. Or I mean, sorry, it's the other way. You can use a name only without using a value. You can only say storage tier, and then do not give any value. But ideally, you shouldn't do that.
So basically, you're saying do not put any empty values, even if it's allowed. At least have something populated on that. Keep it right. Yeah.
If you have only one value, still put a value so that it makes sense to you. Lastly, remember the tags are best used in the category and value format. That means where the key represents the category, and then values are different values in the category. For example, the environment is production, environment is dev. So your category is the environment, and the values can be production or dev, like that.
Right.
So
got it.
These are few of the best practices that you should follow in tagging.
Okay, so we talked about the best practices, but how about a customer? How should they approach the problem of tagging their environment correctly? And how does that process look like?
First, you would start with the discover existing process. You want to automate. Tagging is also going to help you automate every task. Aria Automation does that. So you need to find out how the VMs are deployed today, what the process it exactly follows. So start with that. And then in that process, remove unnecessary steps. That's the second step. Third is determine the future process, where you want to go to, what the future looks like. And based on that, define a tagging strategy. And then while defining, produce the simplest tagging strategy for placement. Remember, simplicity is beauty in anything that you do. The more simple it is, the more beautiful it is.
Yeah, keep it simple, right? That's the age-old philosophy.
Yes, that applies today to everything. This flowchart shows the tagging strategy. So you start with determining the current placement policies, how it's placed today, analyze and then remove unnecessary steps, then repeat that process, rinse and repeat until you do not find any more unnecessary steps. And then you go to the next stage, what is determine the required future process for the placement policy. And then based on that, you determine a tagging strategy. And then you again rinse and repeat, asking yourself the same question, can it be made simpler?
Yeah.
Till the time you cannot make it more simpler, to look through that. Otherwise, you come to a perfect tagging strategy for that environment.
Yeah, and then this has to be adhered by all the stakeholders, like you mentioned earlier, right? Cloud architect, infrastructure architect, the automation guy, the developer, whoever is involved in the project, they should be following the same tagging principles, best practice, and the process, right?
Yes, and the reason I am saying so, we would see very shortly, like when we have multiple environments, you have multiple people involved, and then this is generic principle that needs to be followed by everyone.
Yeah.
But when you have the tagging, it sits on the top. So we will see that.
Yeah. So we talked about tagging in respect of Aria Automation, but what about other VMware products and solutions? Because it interacts with all of them, right?
Yeah, that is a very interesting question, because as you rightly mentioned, Aria Automation is an automation layer. It's supposed to automate the tasks that you do using the other products in the mix. So let's have a look at the other product interrelations. Yes. Mainly, there are three areas, which is vCenter Server, you have NSXT, and then Aria Operations Manager. So let's define tag again. So tag is a label that you can apply to any objects in the inventory to make it easier to sort and search for that particular product or object, right? So it is at the core of SDDC. Earlier I said tagging was at the core of Aria Automation. Now I'm saying it's at the core of software-defined data center, or I can say at the core of any cloud, be it private cloud, public cloud, should be at the core.
Yes.
Because it helps building the policy-driven infrastructure and converts the static policies to dynamic and contextual in nature. Tags makes it more dynamic. It can be, it can have this policy today, it can have another policy tomorrow, and then just change a tag and then it applies. Now, that is very interesting. All these products, they utilize tags, but their naming is different in all these three products. So
why is that? Why is the naming different in all these three products?
That answer is historical. When this product started, the engineering team defined, okay, we are going to define tags in this product in this way. Then the other eventually we will come to that nirvana where everything would be identical. Till the time we need to understand the different context, right? So in vCenter Server, we do again, but the basic format is key and the value format. That remains same. It's just called differently. In vCenter, we call them categories and tags. Instead of saying key value, we say categories and tags. So for example, like you have categories as operating system, tags can be Linux, Windows, Solaris. And then same thing goes for like storage tier, you say gold, silver, bronze.
Right.
But in vCenter, we create categories and we create tags. Same thing, key, value.
So we need to just understand this bit of differentiation here, right? Okay.
Yeah. It's the same thing, key value, but then the way they are called, the key is called your category and the value is called tags.
All right. So this is vCenter. Now, how about NSXT? How does it look there?
NSXT, the same thing. That's scope and tags. So key here is called as scope and then value is tags.
Yeah. So these are the nuances to each products at the moment, right? Until, like you said, reach to that optimal nirvana state. Okay. So this is NSXT. Then how does it look in Aria Operations?
Aria Operations, they have tag and tag value. Here you create a tag and under that you have tag values. Generally, we can create tags in Aria Operations, but most of the times we will just discover tags from vCenter servers and then we would use those. Unless until we are specifically creating categories and custom folders and custom objects, we generally discover it from a vCenter server.
Just discover it. Okay, got it.
Yeah.
So then, well, we have seen tags in all these products, but what about their interdiscoverability? How does that work?
Ultimately, at the end of the day, they are interacting with each other. So how the tags are discovered to other products, that is very interesting. And this is how it looks. So you can define tags in all four of these products, NSXT, Aria Operations, vCenter Server. So Aria Operations discovers tags from vCenter servers and NSXT directly. But the opposite is not true. Any tags that you define in Aria Automation is not discoverable in vCenter Server or NSXT. So the scope of any defined tags within Aria Automation is Aria Automation only. But it discovers, so the tags that is discovered from vCenter and NSXT are the external tags that we talked about earlier. And any tag that you define within Aria Automation is the internal tag. Okay? And then Aria Automation can discover tags from a vCenter server or NSXT, but then the opposite is not true.
Right. Okay. So this flow we need to really understand. Okay, got it.
We were talking about that why different teams should come together, and then so you can define tags in Aria Automation, right?
Yeah.
But then I would say when you define a tag, capability tags, the infrastructure tags should come from vCenter servers.
Yeah.
The reason being, when a new cluster gets deployed, a cloud admin who defines tags in Aria Automation may not know, because your infrastructure team and cloud teams are different. They may not know what are the capabilities of this cluster, where it should go. But your infrastructure team for sure will know that. So they should define the tags in vCenter server saying this is a production, or say this is tested. That is automatically discovered in Aria Automation and then it's consumed there. And the other way, when you create VMs through Aria Automation, you create VM tags in Aria Automation and then use those to group in vCenter servers. The same thing goes to NSXT as well.
So how do we summarize all of this? Is there a better way to look at all of this?
Yes. So when you summarize, you see in Aria Automation, we have key value. You are actually grouping the values and then providing individual values to it. Look at it from that perspective.
Yeah.
And NSXT, it's same thing, scope, tag, operations manager, tags, and then tag value, and then vCenter server, category, tag.
That's interesting. Now, how do we make sense of everything? I mean, it seems a little complex topic. How do we really approach it?
Right. So if I try to explain it, say, giving an example, say in Aria Automation, say, for example, I'm making a deployment to create two tags for the VMs in NSXT manager and the vCenter server. So the tags we say production and web to be defined in both the environments. It represents web server in production environment. So in NSXT, I can predefine a group with membership criteria as virtual machines, where the tag equals to web and the scope is production in NSXT. So in Aria Automation, I say the VM tag is production and web, and in NSXT, we have predefined values of scope is production and then value means web. So the deployed VM in vCenter server requirement is web and production. We can search for all the VMs with the tags web or production in the vCenter server, right? And then operations manager, it discovers all these tags. So we can create, I was saying that custom groups in operations to match these so that they are automatically grouped using all these tags. So that's why you would probably utilize those for costing, capacity planning, all of that. We want to kind of group all those VMs in the operations manager.
So we'll be seeing some of this in a later part in our demo also, right?
Right. We are going to see the demos and see how all this comes together. But before that, let's have a look at how to implement all of this. Because this seems like pretty complex right now. So
yeah, I know we covered a lot in theory of tagging, but yeah, how do we really actually implement it? Yeah, let's have a look on that.
So before you implement, you have a couple of considerations. So first of all, create tags for all different environments. So if you have multiple environments like AWS, Azure, vSphere, create tags for all of them.
Yeah.
Now consider different compute resources and create tags accordingly. For example, your production cluster, test cluster, all of those. So segregate all of them and then create tags based on regions or locations. So for example, you have your location is Australia. Within Australia, you have Sydney data center, you have Melbourne data center. Within India, I have Delhi data center, Pune data centers. Segregate those as well. And then categorize and create tags for different storage. You have different tiers. Same thing for your networking. You have DMZ environment, DB-LAN, or other environment. Logically, you have capability tags, which are test, dev, production, all of that. Yeah. So generally, these are the considerations that you would take. If I summarize this, you say probably an example is a cloud account. At that level, you target a typical endpoint. So you have vSphere, AWS, GCP, Azure, and then you have zones, which is location-based. It can be location-based, it can be cluster-based, or whichever makes sense. And then you can have compute as prod, non-prod, lab, and then you have similar things for network and network profile, and then storage profiles for that example.
So basically, we just need to, like you said, whoever is in the team needs to make sure that they are following the same convention and then using the same tag in each environment. So that's super important, right?
Right. So tagging is actually, before even implementing your cloud solution, you should have a tagging strategy in mind, because that drives the placement. If you do not have a tagging, how do you decide where to go for all these placements? Right?
Super important. Now, we covered this example as well. Now, do you have anything for us to see in our multi-cloud lab?
We would go to actual demo, but before that, let's see how that lab looks. We wanted to give a sneak peek to our lab because going forward, we are going to work in these labs everywhere. This is how it looks. We have browser through which we would interact with Aria suite of products, the Aria Automation. We would utilize Cloud Template to deploy all these endpoints. And endpoints, we have Azure VMware Solutions, AVS, we have GCVE, we have VMware Cloud on AWS, Rackspace, and the native cloud solutions. So we have all these endpoints. The tagging we have utilized is cloud account. Endpoint can be AVS, GCVE, VMC on AWS, or on-prem. So I select any one of the values, it can go to any of the endpoint. And then I have cloud zone, network, or storage. I'm utilizing a simple tag environment for all of them to segregate all of them, because I do not have too much complexities into this environment. And then the template is a simple template, is I take as input which environment it should go to. And based on that, it ends up in one of the environments. Or a bit complex is multiple VMs. This is an application which, so you see all the VMs, they have these tags mentioned where that they should go to. And while defining the tags, we have the constraints and then the other tags that's there. So that's how the templates is defined. So here we had multiple environments, but we did not have a variety of storage or network. So let's have a look at another complex example where I have 5 clusters, 2 different locations, and how they look like. So I have cloud assembly where I have cloud zones, 2 different zones, and then they are tagged as region. The region can be Delhi or Pune. So based on the code is Del or PNQ. They're applied in cloud assembly. And then storage profiles, they have 3 different types of storage profile. It can be database, application, and web, because depending on applications goes into 3 different locations. So there's a tag storage tier, and then the values can be database, application, web. And then something similar for network, because I have 3 different types of network, which goes to all of these 5 clusters. So all these are common to all 5 clusters. And here the tag is app net, and then they can be again database, application, web. Depending on what type of VM it is, it would go utilize any one of the networks. How it all comes together. So user, they just select the VM size, right? What size of VM they need. Based on that, variable replacement happens in the cloud template. The project is selected, endpoint is selected, region, which region it would go to. And then the network selection happens based on the tags that you have. So appnet. So depending on which network that you select, the network is allocated. And then size is allocated, which flavor, size is allocated, selected. Then image selection happens, which image needs to go. Then the cluster selection happens. And that depends on the tag that I utilized, is like which constraint, which region it should go to, daily PNQ, which region it should go to. And then storage is selected, which storage tier it should go to. After all of that, machine is allocated and then sent for provisioning. End users, they don't get to see all of that. They just see, okay, I have requested for a catalog item. It went for approval. If it was approved, it was just deployed. All this is abstracted from them.
Looks very simple from end user's perspective, right? That's really good, man. All right, so we covered a lot of theory and a bit of architectural diagram around what we have in the lab. How about we have an actual demo and see how it actually works in our Aria Automation console?
Right, let's have a demo of that and how all of this comes together.
Let's do that. So you're already logged on to VMware Aria Automation page, right?
Right. So I wanted to just show a small demo of that. We will cover all of this later, the videos, how I built this, how this drives and everything. But then here, we're just showing the demo, how everything comes together. So you see this template that I had shown earlier. Each of the VMs, they have a tag where it should go to. This constraint tag, that this environment, based on the inputs that I have, like where it should go to VMC on AWS or GCVE or AVS or on premises, it would be placed there. Note another tag. This is post-deployment tags that gets defined in VM. So the VM is deployed in vCenter server and gets tagged with this, like environment, tier, and application. So this is the template looks like, and I'm utilizing pipeline for actually installing the application itself. This is really interesting. We would show that in later videos, what the application is, how that looks. But I have deployed that application. How do I monitor? Deploying is just 20%, 30% of it. For 70% of the time, I need to monitor that application.
Exactly. So that's where DevOps comes in, right?
Yeah. So DevOps is much more important. I mean, deployment is important, but then DevOps operations is much more headache for everyone.
Yes.
So I can monitor that environment in operations. Typically, we utilize these operations for visualizing how my environment is performing and all of that. But then, say for example, I'm saying VMs availability and all of that. But what about my application? I have hundreds, thousands of VMs. I'm maintaining an environment which is 10,000 VMs.
Yeah.
And for end users, what matters is the application itself. They don't care about all of those VMs. They care about that application. So how do I monitor those applications? And then operations shows us the infrastructure portion, right? So this is where it gets interesting. I have operations for network where we can monitor those applications at the network perspective. So what happens now? I'm logging into the console and then going to operations for network. Aria operations for network, and all I had to do is define applications here. And the reason I'm defining it here, we would get to see it, pretty interesting, is I have general visibility to the entire environment, but I'm more interested into the application. So I say, discover my application. I can discover based on flows, tags, names. I can even discover from our service now. But then here I'm using tags. So I'm saying the scope is all VMs in that environment, and then group the application by this tag where key is environment and then values matching VMC on AWS. That's what I want. And then application matches PTR demo. You remember? We said,
yes, I remember that. Yes.
Yep. Very interesting that I said this tags environment based on input environment. TR is application is 3TR demo and then defined tier. So what I'm saying, I am doing that and then group tiers by web app DB. That's all. And I say discover. What it does, it discovers the applications for me. Nothing further. It says these the application distributions and all of that. I can get to see the list and environment.
Just with those tags, right? It's just discovering anything that has those tags. Yeah, okay.
Based on the tags that you define, say for example, this application, it discovers that grouping, that application, and then it gives you all that information: incoming traffic, outgoing traffic, what's the flow, intent, what the countries it's being accessed from, how many VMs, the network flow. Amazing. It will show you the metrics and then flows and all of that, just based on the tags that I had defined. And what's more interesting is that application that you have just seen. If I come back to operations, I go to environment and then business application, that automatically comes up here. I don't need to define anything in operations. So Satya, my battery in my AirPods died, so I had to switch my headphone.
All good, man. All good. We're actually looking good with that.
Let's continue the demonstration. So what I was saying, that now I can see that this application comes from operations for network, and then what's the name of that application there. I can see the tiers under that and the VMs that are part of that particular tier. So all that discovered from operations for network. Now, this is pretty limited information. I need to get more information. So I go to details. Now I get to see the business application, and then I get to see the infrastructure side of it. Which vCenter is running, which cluster, which host, which data store. So I get to see end-to-end of that application where it's running, and any problem at any level, it would let me know. And not only that, I get to see the other information related to that, which alerts with the capacity remaining. See, this is amazing monitoring of that application perspective.
Very, very detailed information. And this is all because we tagged it in the right way. And VMware Aria Operations just picked it up everything automatically, right?
Yep. So I define the tags in Aria Automation. At the deployment time, the tags are applied. That is picked up by operations for network. That entire application is discovered here in Aria Automation. Now, let's go beyond that. Let's go beyond ordinary. You see the business application KPI availability? I am doing synthetic monitoring.
So what is actually that?
So I said while defining that application, well, it was discovered in operations. I said synthetic monitoring, and I just said, okay, make this API request, and this is get, and then this is URL. And then the second one was this: make this request. So if this is returns something, I would say you can define all of that. I can say this is good, this is bad. So I am just, without touching the VMs, without touching anything, I'm just saying, okay, my business application, whether it's up, and then what's the response code was that, and then the performance, what's the response time,
So I get to see the availability, average response time,
Right.
without touching that application. All of this end to end, deploy the VM or deploy that application, monitor it in network, monitoring it operations. If I look at that, I would say how my application is doing. You deploy new instances, everything would turn up here automatically. I don't have to touch it again.
It's fantastic. Now about this monitoring, right? Like in public cloud environment, when you have to pay for every metrics there, do I have to pay for all the metrics that we're seeing in here?
No, not at all. The products here are either, if you are using on-premises version, they are licensed based out of CPU, the underlying hosts, or the number of instances that you monitor. Based on these two metrics, you don't worry about that. It collects, it collects hundreds of alerts and then metrics and everything. Don't have to think about it.
This is not monetized at all. Everything is, it just comes as a package of the what you buy, right? Okay.
Yep. Awesome. And then you see the monitoring. You could do a DNS lookup. You could do based on DNS lookup, based on server processing seconds, all of this without implementing anything inside the VM, without any agents.
Right. It just comes out of the box.
That is the power of tagging. I said this is placement tags, and then this is post placement. This is the tags that I give to the VMs, discovered in Aria Operations for network, and then everything else in between. So this is, to me, is a different level altogether.
Yeah, like you said last time, I know you define once and use it many times in different products, right?
Right.
I like it. Excellent, man.
So
is there anything else we need to see on the demo? I know this is a short demo.
No, not from demo perspective. We will cover this, I built this environment. So we will cover and talk about this in the future. So we will not talk about that. We can talk about what comes next.
Okay, so in today's video, we cover demystifying tags in Aria Automation, and in the next episode, we'll be covering setting up Aria Automation, right? What is coming? Can you just give us a short sneak peek of what's coming?
Yeah, the demo that I provided, I have shown that how I have defined all of that. But then before even starting there, I had to configure Aria Automation, right? Yes. Configure all those endpoints. So we would get into the deep end of the pool from now onwards. We would show how exactly Aria Automation is configured. We will talk about how exactly I built the templates. What are the possibilities there? Then we would talk about service broker, policies, and then pipelines where I install the applications inside and then build, say, CI/CD pipelines. Those kind of environments. So a lot of interesting topics to come.
So from here on, it's going to be all hands-on demo and then real product and solutions, right?
Yes, majority of the times.
Excellent, man. Really appreciate your time and your passion to show us what VMware Aria suite of product is capable of. So I think that's all for today's video, isn't it?
Yes, that's all for today's. Thank you so much for listening to us. But then stay tuned. More to come.
Absolutely. So thank you, everyone, for your time today. And we hope you find this video useful. And we look forward to seeing you on our 4th episode of this multi-cloud management series. And once again, thank you, Sajal. It's been awesome seeing how tag is, what it does, and how potent the tag is, right? So really appreciate that.
You're most welcome, and thank you for having me here. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Hope to see you again soon.
Thanks, all. Have a good one, and bye for now.
Bye-bye.